They're going to make it, or could we still come? Can they wissen? But the blood's still there. Zog to Gemara. Nishbiru ragleha. Oh, Mati's here. We were thinking maybe you went to Victoria like a little early. Mati's here. Gewaltig. Then Shlomi should be coming as well. An easy blot today. Nishbiru ragleha. We learned that if the leg of the chicken breaks, Rashi says if it actually punctures the skin, it will be a treifa. We actually had a discussion about it yesterday. If you find a broken bone in a package of chicken, do you have to be choished that maybe it happened before the animal died? I want sure you have to ask a Rav. You ever heard of such a thing? Yeah. Did you ever ask the Rav such a shayla? I never really found the bones, but only if it punctures the skin. So look, Rahid Tzana, there was a basket, the inkure of oifoy shenishtabu raglein barkuva lamata, oy lamaila me'arkuva, but ve'ena etem yotzalachutz. So there was a bag full of shilas. I guess they have to matter shilas. They threw it in the bag and they brought it all together. And in either case, it did not puncture the skin. It's a black bird, meaning it has a very thin membrane on its brain. We're talking about the leg anyway. It has white patches on its forehead. That's why this bird is called an inkuri. Rashi lives in France. In France, they have these type of birds. I wonder if they're the Caristeo birds. You know those massive birds? They have these huge nests that are like 2 feet in diameter that are on a lot of the telephone posts in Hungary. They have them in Toronto too? I never saw these in Toronto. Oh, I thought they were special Hungarian birds, because Hungarian like everything supersized.
The city puts them up.
The city puts up those birds? Why?
Yes, that's what I heard.
Oh, really? Okay, so Dr. Gemara, here the city puts out coyotes. Shines name else. Okay. So Rava checked the Tumas Hagidin. The Tumas Hagidin is an area around the knee where a whole bunch of sinews and arteries come together. It's a big bundle of sinews. And there's 16 sinews, or I'm not sure what they're called, or arteries, but they're strings that all come together around that area. It's the bottom of the hip bone, the thigh bone, so it's by the knee area where basically the superhighway interchange comes together. Like the other doesn't know that at the corner of King and I believe it's Dufferin, the main artery of the cabled internet comes into Toronto, and the buildings in that area are very expensive to rent there, because any technology company or company that hosts a lot of websites, their epicenters are usually in that area, so they could tap into the main artery of the internet. There's a lot of cooling required in those buildings. In those buildings where there's so much electronic equipment, there's so much heat that they have to reject, that it's more expensive. Like it's like 10 times the price of a square foot in the building is the square footage of the roof, because they need a roof to put the heat rejection equipment. And there's buildings where you can have like a 10-story building that there's not a human in it. It's all computers, and just because it's on the main internet hub. So we can call it the Tzumas Hagidin. The Achrei, that's like a useless piece of information. The Achrei, and he said it was going to be kosher. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Shmutas Yerech, the Shmutas Yad Bebehema Sheira. If the front leg of an animal is pulled out of its socket, so we had about Shmutas Yerech a couple of days ago, but Shmutas Yerech Bebehema Streifa, and that was the Buka da Atma the Shaf Meduchte. And if you remember, the Gemara said it would only be a treifa if it's the achol nive, if the tendon that holds that I think Duvi actually commented on that. If it's the tendon that holds the bone in the socket, if that deteriorates, then it would be a treifa. But shmutas yerech ba'oif would also be treifa. But shmutas gaf ba'oif is treifa. So the oif in a way is more chomer, because even if its wing is dislocated, it's going to be a treifa. not because of the dislocation, it's because if its wing get dislocated based on its proximity to its lungs, Chayshinon Shema Nikfa Hareya. We're afraid that this wandering bone, this loose bone that was dislocated, could have damaged the lungs. Zok Rashi, Lefi Shareya Nechbas Bein Atzlois. We know the lungs are packaged inside the rib cage. Ukrum habosor rach v'dak bein tela latela, and the space in between. Let me just finish Rashi. The space in between each rib is not a thick space; it's not protected. If a wing gets ripped out, misnatakas hareya im hagaf. It might also rip the lung while we're doing it.
Why can't you check that out?
So the Gemara says, Ushmu Amar Tibodek. Check it. Tibodek hareya. What do you do? How do you check the reya? Machnis kana dak bigagerish. You put a small tube into the windpipe. The neifach hareya, and you blow in. You inflate the little lung of the little bird. The maruach yotze, and if air escapes, treifa v'lav ksher. Exactly like what Dubi said. Mechena Rabbi Yechidon tibadek. Chizkiya Amar ein reya la'oif. Birds don't have lungs. Rabbi Yechidon Amar yesh lo. Of course. Birds have lungs. The yeshna ka'alosh averid. It's like it's a small thing. It doesn't have lobes like in a larger animal, but it is a little bit of an inflatable balloon. I'm sorry. Very good question. Let's go back there. But this is we're going to take a moment and address everything. Rabbi Yechidon yeshloi v'yeshna ka'alosh averid bein agapayim, between its wings. Okay. My ain't real life. Ilamed the less like cloud. V'kachazina dislay. Mamish do vizkasha. Very good. Mamish do vizkasha. How could your chizki say that there's no lungs? It has lungs. Ella the lomitrape. What he meant is it doesn't have the halachic significance of lungs. Legaba the hilchas treifas that a puncture in it will render the animal a treifa. V'atani Levi taught us treifa shemonu chachamim b'behema kenegdem ba'if. And if anything, yeser alein ba'oif nishbah etzem af al pi shelo nikev kum shomayach. We said that the brain of a bird is more sensitive, but as far as the treifas hareya, surely it does apply to an oif as well. Zokt Rashi alma nikva hareya to behema hu adin la'oif. Ella, what he means is ein la loy linpol v'loy lichmer. There's two types of treifas that exist by a behema that would not apply to an oif. Linpa means im noflim in agag, the armor shricha bedika, that we say you have to be boidik an animal if it falls off a roof. Out of the things you have to check for, like the spinal cord, you don't have to check the lungs. There's no concern that the lungs would have been damaged if a bird fell off a roof, and not if it fell into a fire. We know we have to check the b'nei ma'ayim to see if they were discolored, but not the lungs. Why not? What is so special about the lungs? My time, and this is a very interesting factoid. The ribs of an animal, they're not perfectly round. If you look at the cross section of the bone, it's not perfectly round. The ribs of an animal are actually rectangular in shape. Now, in a cow, the long part of the rectangle is parallel to the rib cage, so it's a thinner protected area. Because if the long side of the rib protects the rib cage, that means it's a thinner barrier. But by birds, it's the opposite. The long side of the rectangle of the cross section of the bone is perpendicular to the rib cage, so it's a much thicker protective layer. Therefore, it won't get damaged even if it fell off.
That's because birds fly, and it's very easy for them to fly.
The bird knows what he's doing. Yeah. So what did he say? He still asks the Vizkasha. Who's Chizkiya, who said that there is no concern of treifas because there's no treifas in a lung. Nikrish ene baki b'tanagoyim. Vice the choice, Chizkiya doesn't know much about chickens. So what does it mean? Ene baki. Rashi says ene roga lechol tanagoyim. He ate steak. He wasn't a chicken eater. He eats rib steaks. it was like so shepherding him. That wasn't his area of expertise. Okay, so it's very interesting. They show here in the picture book that there's a profound difference that's actually visible. Because if you take out the lungs of a cow, you don't see anything. You don't see any markings from the rib cage. But if you take the lungs of a chicken, the ribs, the lungs themselves have lines in them. Like when you grill a steak on the grill, it has lines. The natural structure of lungs is it has those lines in it because the rib cage stick into it. So it actually makes an impression into the lungs, and the lungs hold that shape. Let me see if I can find a picture. They have a very good picture of it. They have very good pictures of everything up here. They had actually a picture of the lungs that showed if it showed a raw lung removed from the chicken. You actually see the lines in it. So here's a drawing they have. It shows the lines. I'll show what I got over here. It actually shows the lungs have lines in it because the rib cage actually sticks into it. But there's a picture of it. Let me see. The pictures earlier in the book. Let's see if I can find it. Usually goes both. So here's Nunvav. Okay, here's the chicken. Okay, very good. So here they peel the skin away, and you could see the lungs that are in between the ribs. This red skin is not meat. They pulled it away, and you actually see the lungs. Here they pulled even more away, so you see more of the lungs. But then over here, he actually shows the lung. You see how the lung has these impressions in it? Because it's stuck in. This is what the inside of the rib cage. You could see there's more depth, so that creates a much stronger protection. Here you have the lung peeled off the rib cage, so you could see how these ribs actually created the impressions in there. So because of that, the bird's lungs are very well protected. So basically now we have a machlokes if there is a concern with lungs of a bird or not, but even if there is a concern, they're definitely better protected than the lungs of a behemoth. Amar Huna Amarab, Shmutas Yerech Ba'oif. What if the whole pulk is yanked out? Kshera, that would still be kosher. Amar Le Rabba Bar Huna L'Rav Huna. I Varabanan also Mipamadisa Amar Rabbi Yehuda Mishmei de Rav Amar Shmutas Yerech Ba'oif is treifa. So how could you say Shmutas Yerech Ba'oif is kshera? Rav is quoted as having said it was treifa. Amar Le, don't worry about it. Beri, my dear son, Nahara Upashte. There's different approaches to this. Zot Rashi, Nahara Upashte, Ein Pashte Hanor Doimen. The different tributaries that come off of a river are not all the same. Zechor v'zoimet. Some are flowing very quickly. Some are flowing slowly. It all depends on the size, the structure, the shape, the direction. Kain kach ein minek hamakoim is doima. Not all places have the same another. What do you mean? Yeah. So they. So I'm happy you brought that up. That's a very good point. Right? Nobody's asking. It can't be different arguments. Oh, Rav. So look at Rashi. Kach ein minik hamakom is doima. Rashi has your kasha. For Rav ksheres firle. Really, Rav holds its kosher. But v'Rav b'nei Pumbedisa shenaga b'Isser. When Rav was in Pumbedisa, he was a guest there. He saw that the olim was not eating birds that had dislocated legs. So therefore, there they asked him, "What do I do with them?" There he wasn't going to go against what the accepted practice was in that city. But the problem was people took it the wrong way. Rabbi Yehuda Pumbedisa have the Sava de Rav Tarfa. He said, "I heard they asked Rav. Rav said it's straight." He thought because Rav really held. No, Rav said this in Pumbedisa, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda may have had a wrong impression. You always ask the kashas just at the right time, so you make Rashi geschmacker. Because somebody Rashi, okay, Rashi points it out, but when you ask the kasha right as the Rashi is about to give the answer, it brings Rashi to life. Zot gemar weiter. Like even I didn't chap that they're both Rav until you asked the question, and so now Rashi has to jump out and save us. Although Rab Abba Ashkechel Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba. Rab Abba went and he found Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba the kabodik b'tzumas hagid. He was being baited to see if the tzumas hagidin was damaged. Why are you concerned b'chalal about the Tzumas Agidin. For Rav Huna Omer Rav, Shmutas Yerech Boiv kosher. Even if the whole Yerech was pulled out, it's kosher. Kosher again if just the Tzumas Agidin were severed. Omer Lei, I don't know from no Chachmas. I know Masnishin Yidana. I know Mishnah. And the Mishnah says, Behema shenechtechu agla min ha'akuva lomata, kshera, min ha'akuva lomata psula, v'chein shenitel tzumas agidin. So the Mishnah says, so I follow the Mishnah. And Rav said, v'chein ba'oif. This applies equally to a knife. So Oibazai, that's why I'm akbid. So fact Gemara, Oibazai, Yechi kosher the Rav and the Rav. Now we got a real problem, because we have Rav quoted as having said that it's kosher, and now we have Rav quoted as having said v'chein ba'oif that it's going to be prosel. Ishtik, he didn't answer. No, because this was Rav himself paskin. Yeah, I don't think that was the case. Rav himself said it. There was Rabbi Huda said over the name of Rav, right? So Amarei, so he maybe you can ask a kasha. Dilma shani lo ben shmuta lichatucha. If the whole bone was pulled out, then it's kosher v'afilu dit lakula, even if the whole tzumas agidin is missing. Uvechatucha, but if it's cut, treifa, afilu tzumas agidin levadan. So you might ask, that's counterintuitive. If you took the whole thing out, it's going to be kosher. So how could you say if it's cut, it will be possible? Zok to Gemara, Amalei v'at mefaresh shmai to the Rav. You came up with your chiddush that this maybe is what Rav said. That's exactly what Rav said. Mefarish on Rav shmutos kshera chatuchos psula. It doesn't make sense. V'altatama. This is the same recurring theme that we have in Treifas. Shoyt choytcha mikan u'meisa choytcha mikan v'choisa. There's not necessarily simple mathematical logic applies here. Different areas have different qualities, and sometimes you could remove something completely and the animal could live, but if it's cut, the animal won't live. Kisaka Baba, when Rabbi went to stroll, he met Reb Zeir, the Yosy Omar. This is what he was saying. Omar Vuna Rab, Shmut Asiyerech Ba'oif Treifa. Amalei, he said, Chai Damar, I can promise, Miyoyme de Selek Mar Lahacha, from the time that you came up to Eretz Yisrael, talking about Reb Zeir, from the time you, Reb Zeir, came to Eretz Yisrael, Havelon, Pischon Pe Kamer Ravuna, meaning, Zok Rashi, Kolema Huskatnu Ledaber, Bishmutas Yerach Lefnei Ravuna. We had an opportunity to discuss this exact shaila in front of Ravuna. V'amalong Sheira. So he found Reb Zeir saying, Rav Huna Marav says Treifa. So who was it that came up? And Rav Abba said, but we met Rav Huna himself, and Rav Huna told us it's Ksheira. We found him checking, meaning he's concerned that it could be a problem. And we asked him, so he answered us the same thing as before. And so the same problem, the same problem we had a moment ago, and the same thing Ishtik, again, he didn't answer. And I asked him, I don't understand what's the kasha, the Dilma Shani Lei L'Rav Ben Shmuta L'Chatucha. Maybe that's what Rav holds. There's a difference between Shmuta, which would be better, and Chatucha, which would be worse. Well, Omerlin, told me, the Rav, or you think you had your chiddush that you're going to explain Rav, that's exactly what Rav said himself. Okay, so then he says, tell me what other information do you have? Maybe you have some more information. So Rashi says, so he asked Reb Zeir, you Reb Zeir, did you hear any more discussion about this subject now that you're hearing it? So, I did hear over from Reb Barashi, Shmut Asierach Ba'oif is Treifa. Needless to say, this was a very controversial issue in those days. The Omer Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, Ilmoli Hava Rabbi Yochanan Ba'asra the Oru Ba Chavrosa Lahatera. Rabbi Yochanan is the one who said over the name of Rav that it's treif, right? No, sorry, Rabbi Yochanan. If Rabbi Yochanan would have been in the Batei Midrashim, where they paskined that it's not a treifa, loy perchus, he wouldn't have made a movement, he wouldn't have argued, he would have accepted what they said. I believe Rashi is like perchus, lohoya yochel lomud knaf. He wouldn't have even made he wouldn't have even rolled his eyes. He wouldn't have made a move. The great titans of Torah all said it's mutter. Had he been there, he would have never even suggested to disagree with that. Now here's an interesting story. Rab Chanina actually had a Tarnagolas. Exactly this condition. And he brought it to Rabbi. Now he was the very first, people always wonder who thought of this idea to make a Maris Lechel Streifus so we can see these pictures. The innovator of this concept, the pioneer in Maris Lechel Streifus was Rab Chanina. Because what Rab Chanina did? He preserved this bird to have as a sample forever. Umocha Rab Chanina he actually preserved it so that it can show this specific bird, Rebbe was matter to me. Would you like a piece? But that was 100 years ago, no way, right? Because he preserved it for a long time. The rest hilchasa pechohan shmaitza. We're not going to paskin like all of these halachas. The shari shmutas yerch boif. So we had so much support now. It seems like the heter side of Rebbe was winning against the Isser side of Rabbi Yochanan. But Zok the Gemara, we don't paskin lekula ela kehad show Rabbi Yosy ben the Heroish Rabbi Shua ben Levi kederes kana bekama. We know there has to be a hole in the kana in order for it to be a treifa. Amrullah, he told him Mishnah Shalema Sheninu ad ki Isser haritalki. It has to be the size of an Isser haritalki in order for it to pass the kana. We had a condition in our neighborhood where there was a hole in the kana. The also law krumen shokada v'chaisa, and they actually made a patch out of reeds and it lived. So maybe it's not. So you see that even if there's a hole in the kana, you could fix it. You're going to rely on your science experimental surgery. We know that it was accepted all over Klal Yisrael, like the Gemara said. Nevertheless, he made it a cast. He actually built a splint for this birdie. The lived. The teretz is, obviously, it didn't last 12 months. We know that a treifa has to live for 12 months. So yeah, you proved that it lived. The animal lived with a patched kana. The animal lived with a splint on its leg. But did someone track it for a year? No. It lived. It didn't die right away. So you made a big deal about it. But it wasn't true. So don't bring me a raya that it's going to live. It's not going to live. And therefore it's considered a treifa. We're paskening by Shmutas Yerch, by Oif, is going to be a treifa. And of course, if there's a hole in the kana, even if you patch it up, it's going to be a treifa. And the asking bidvarim means he liked to experiment. He liked to check things out for himself. He would do things. He would want to do science experiments to prove things. So let's have a look over here. To prove that Rabbi Yehuda was not correct. Rabbi Yehuda used to say, we had in our Mishnah that if all of the finer down comes off of the skin of a chicken, the bird is going to be a treifa. But the Tarnagolas hoisaloi l'Rab Shimon ben Chalafta shenitla noitze shalom, that all its noitze fell off. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, this would be a treifa. V'henicha b'taner, he put the chicken in the oven. I don't think he said it at 350. He probably said it at the 90, right? Because otherwise the bird would have other issues. V'tola aleh b'matla shel tarsiim, and he covered his bird with the ashmata of the coppersmith, but that was basically to keep the animal warm. V'gidla knafayim ha'achronim yosem v'narishonim. Not only did it grow back not only did it grow back this down, it grew back even better. I'm not sure why it's called knafayim. I believe the Mefarshim speak about it, because we're not really talking about wings here. We're talking about the smaller down feathers. But it grew back even better. So that proves, Rabbi Yehuda says, you're telling me to treifa, forget it, look, it grew back even better. In fact, the Gemara, V'dilma kosav Rabbi Yehuda, treifa mishabachas. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda holds that the treifa is going to die, but immediately after the wound occurs, yes, it seems to be improving. It gets really good in that area, and then it crashes. Maybe that's what Rabbi Yehuda holds. So don't bring me a riot from the fact that it grew back. You didn't hold it for 12 months to see if it's going to drop dead. If that was the case, that's not logical. It would be logical to say, yes, that a treifa will get stronger, but maybe other parts of its goof would get stronger temporarily. But to say that the wound itself, the damage itself, that will correct itself and come into a better condition than it was before the damage, that is not logical to say. So therefore he wanted to bring a raya that maybe it shouldn't be a treifa. So that's when my asking advarim. I want to get down into what does this mean exactly that Reb Shimon Chalavta was an askin b'dvarim. What exactly did they mean by that? So actually, Lama Nikra Shmoi askin tchila. Why was he called this askin? Why was Reb Shimon Chalavta called an askin? You always have these guys in Shiva who do these brainy zany experiments. So Reb Shimon Chalavta was like that guy. Amar Rab Meshasha. The word askin came from the chsiv lech el nemela otzel. Shlomo HaMelech tells us in Mishli, go otzel, you're lazy. You know you should learn from not to be lazy? Learn from a simple ant. Re'ei dercha, see its ways. V'chacham, and become smart. Learn from the ant. Asher ein lo tzin shoter moshel. It doesn't have any government, ruler, supervisor. They're completely independent. The kings, the ants, in the ant kingdom, there's no king. They just live communally with no higher authority, yet everybody does the right thing. Nevertheless, in the summer they prepare their bread. No one's guiding, forcing, training, supervising them. So that's what Reb Shimon Machlaf was. He was self-starter. So an askin is a self-starter, someone who does things on their own without being forced to by a higher authority.
There's a queen, though. They have a queen.
A queen ant?
Yeah.
By that too?
It's in charge of reproduction. There are different types of ants.
Yeah, so that's a diversion from work.
Every ant has different jobs.
Well, every ant has an uncle.
What?
Every ant has an uncle. Oh. They have jobs. Who gives out the jobs?
No, everything's done by instinct. They're born to whatever job they have. That's somehow it's in their DNA.
I wish I had employees like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's definitely no infrastructure of government and supervisory, and they're not policed.
No, that's right. They're not policed. But there's a defense mechanism. There's also, it's a very complex society. But it's all controlled by instinct.
What you're saying? It's not calling of Shimon to the Askin?
I don't think that's why they're calling him an askin.
Oh, so what are they?
Right. He wanted to see.
Okay, Omar said, Eza, let me go see Echsi Ivadehu, the last Lunaka. I actually want to test this. I want to test this halacha that Shlomo Melech said. So of course, the Rishonim explained he wasn't testing Shlomo Melech's statement. Avad is true. You can't learn this. Rashi doesn't say this. Rashi says he's going to see if it's true. But the other Rishonim learn, let me go see how Shlomo Melech knew. How does Shlomo Melech know this fact? Let me see if we can figure this out. So what he did was, Azal B'tkufas Tammuz. He went in a really hot summer, and Parshat Glimei Akina de Shimshimi, he covered over with a shmata the opening to the anthill, In other words, normally when it's really hot, they can't go outside and work. But on a shady, overcast day, the ants come out. So Nafak also Chad Minayu, one ant came out and said, hey, it's a shady day. It's a great day to accomplish work. Asnach Basimna, and he told everybody, Asnach Basimna, Reb Shimon ben Chalafta made a simon in this ant so he can identify this ant later. He put one of those GPS trackers on it. So this ant went back and gave a big whistle and says, hey guys, come up here. It's nice and shady today. Nafal Tula. So Nafku V'asu. Then the whole Olam came out. They were in the middle of whatever work they were doing. Everyone stopped what they were doing and disrupted the whole activity of the entire anthill and came charging out. And then Reb Shimon Chalafta pulled off his shmata and made it look like this ant was hacking a chinik by everybody. He's crying wolf. Everyone comes running out, and it was for nothing. So they all looked at this guy like he's a lowlife. He hacked everybody at chinik. They killed him. There was no court case. There was no verdict. There was no command. Omar must be shmamina less lo malka. The islu hamina the malka lo leboy. Wouldn't they need to ask permission of the king? Wouldn't they have to go to the justice system? The fact that it was mob rule shows that there is no authority structure. So who said, maybe the king also came out and he was part of the pack. So he by attacking that ant, obviously everyone jumped in and helped. Or Inami, how do you know they didn't go quickly get a verdict? How could he monitor that? Inami ben Malka and Malkava. Maybe they were in between the rulers. Maybe it was election season, and they only had a lame duck president. The Chsiv by Yomamim, you find it by the Eden. By Yomamim, Ein Melech B'Yisrael, Isha Yosha B'Edav Yasa became the Wild West. Ella, you know what? Let's just rely on what Shlomo Melech said. If Shlomo Melech said that they don't have an authority structure, you can take that to the bank. You don't have to prove it with science. Amar Huna, Simin L'Treifa Yud Beis Chodesh. We know this. This is what we've been living with until now in the Mezachta, that if an animal could live 12 months, it's not a treifa. We're going to see there's many dissenting opinions to this. Like we know there's a sheet of treifa chaya. There's a sheet of the treifa will live indefinitely. So Meisvei, Simin L'Treifa, Kol Sheni Aleves. So you see there's a different litmus test if it can give birth. Mishabachas vaylachas, a third litmus test. If the animal seems to improve and get better and better, bidushik sheira. Misnavna vaylachas, if it's deteriorating, bidushi treifa. Rabbi says, Rabbi Omer, similar treifa, shloshim yoim. It only has to live 30 days. On the way, they told him, Balahaba miskaimois, shtayim sholishanim. There's many treifas that live 2 or 3 years. Now this isn't only a kasha on Rabbi who says 30 days, it's a kasha on what we learned 12 months as well. So there's a sheet of rules that treifa chaya. So Tanoi, in fact, it's a machlekes Tanoim what a treifa could do. The Tanya uvegalgalas, if there is a puncture in the skull, sheyesh b'nekev echad oroch, if it has a long thin hole. So it's not this is not it's not the treifas, but this machlekes is b'shama and b'sil lagabe tumas oil. We know a full skull is matama b'oil, but if the skull is missing kamoy ektach, the opening of a drill bit, that opening would make the skull deficient and it will not be matama b'oil. What if there wasn't a round hole like a drill bit? It was a long thin hole, but its area would add up to the same amount as a round hole of size. So sheyesh b'nek of orach, or a filin nekavim harbe, or a whole bunch of small holes, mitzarv and the they are mitzarv. Amar b'Yosy ben Amashulam. Maisa be'invul, there's a story in the city of Invul. Be'echad shenifkesa galgalto rachman leflon, someone's head cracked open. Be'oslo chiduk shel kruya v'choya. They used like a pumpkin shell is a relatively hard shell, or a watermelon shell, and they patched his brain with a gourd shell, and he lived. So you see that it's not going to destroy the skull even with a larger hole. And Omereish, Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Mishom Raya, that was the Raya. Yemoisa Chanoya, that was during the summer. Chivin Sha'over Olav, Yemoisa Tzina Miyad Meis. Yeah, if you follow the subject for a month, you're going to get all excited that he's living. Follow the subject for a year, and this man will not survive. Amar Yaakov, halacha treifa yoledes u'mishabachas. We hold that a treifa can give birth and could even improve in its health. Amar Mener, hani beya the treifa. What if a chicken is a treifa and it laid eggs? Are you allowed to eat the eggs of a treifa? Zok the Gemara shichla kama asura. Whatever eggs were in the bird that the bird laid while it became a treifa, they will be usher to eat because they're treifa. But if after the animal became a treifa, it conceived more eggs, then it will be kosher. Havalezev is a goyim umuter. What does this mean? Shilakana Rashi says it's the eggs that are inside her. Ocean shayu b'mei'el b'shosh and nitva. They're cool and suras. Why? The uber yerach imayu. We say that an uber is like it's part of its mother. If its mother became treifa, it became treifa. V'ima nitrivu. However, if it's an egg that came later, you might also say yerach imayu. True, but the mother isn't the only ingredient here. There's a male input. It's not completely a creation of the mother. There's another input to this egg. Therefore, if it's a mixture, then it will be mutter. It wouldn't be a treifa. What? Yeah, but if it's in the bird, and at that point it became treifa, so everything in that egg came from a treifa. But if after the animal was a treifa, then the egg was conceived, so then even after her being a treifa, there's still an input of kshera here.
He says there's a whole discussion about
How it works.
No, that even if the eggs that came afterwards should also be considered treifa because uber yerachimai.
That's what Rashi says because it's isur v'het or gormaloi. The uber yerachimai only represents half of the egg.
After they're still considered a limb of the treifa, just like the eggs there.
Okay, so what does he say?
See, first Yaakov and Kodesh.
Oh, so when he says see, he usually means it's a longer discussion. There's not a simple answer. So obviously this is a little bit of a shver zach how you sort that out. Ein chanami. Okay, gewaltig. Everyone should have a safe trip to